I can't get this image out of my head, and if you've seen what happens next, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Genuinely gave me nightmares for weeks. I can't believe they showed it on TV. It was August 2003 in Erie in Pennsylvania. An order came into the local pizzeria for 2 small pizzas, but this was no ordinary pizza order. The delivery location was just a few kilometers away from the pizzeria, so although Brian Wells was about to finish his shift, he was like, okay, I'll just quickly do this one last drop off before I go home. He'd worked there for 10 years, so he's very used to doing just like little drop-offs just before he ended his shift. No one could have ever guessed the horror that was about to unfold. Now, he drove over there and got out of his car. The next time he was seen was more horrifying than you could ever imagine. Brian walked into a local bank with a boom strapped around his neck. He was clutching 2 pages of instructions with details of how to rob this bank and a weird kind of treasure hunt. He handed a note over to the terrified clerk, basically demanding cash. The note said that he required $250,000, but she didn't have that much. It said if she didn't hand it over, his neck would explode. Now, shaking, she handed over all the money she had access to, which was only $8,000, which I know is a lot, but obviously nothing compared to what he was asking for. The commotion at the bank alerted police, who raced over there and tracked Brian down, who by this point was in a public car park. And they managed to get to Brian and handcuff him, but the guy was a walking explosive device. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I don't think that handcuffing him is going to solve the problem here. And soon these dramatic scenes were being broadcast in every single person's house across the country, live on TV. What the hell was about to happen? He was begging and pleading, please get this thing off me, I'm going to die. And everybody just stood back, watching and waiting. There was this eerie silence when everybody was just anticipating what was about to happen next. And then 8 minutes later, the device suddenly exploded. He was killed instantly. And honestly, I can't believe that you can actually watch this footage. But the danger was far from over, because obviously some kind of maniac had done this to Brian and they were still on the loose and the clock was ticking. So police grabbed the instructions that Brian had been holding and suddenly just uncovered this bizarre scavenger hunt. Scrawled at the bottom of the instructions was a terrifying warning. It said, act now, think later, or you will die. There was a list of tasks that he had to complete, so police started on doing these tasks and following the hunt. And maybe I'm overthinking here, but I would definitely be paranoid that this was some kind of trap. The trail actually led them back to that original delivery location, and right there was a jar, but the jar was empty. So police were stumped until a few weeks later when they got a call. A man called Brian Rothstein rang up to say, there is a dead man in my freezer. What the hell was going on in this town? He had no issue explaining to police exactly who had done this. He said, my ex Marjorie shot this guy who was her boyfriend called James. It was like, she forced me to go along with this. She forced me to help her tidy this all up and cover it up, but now I am out. I don't want to hide this anymore. And police noticed something extremely interesting. This house that they'd gone to was actually very, very close to the delivery location with the whole pizza situation. Then things kind of started to unravel. Another man came forward called Kenneth Barnes. He said, I know this Marjorie woman and she is evil. He said she was the one who planned this whole pizza delivery device thing. But here's the really controversial part. He claimed Brian was in on it. Brian, who'd had the device strapped around his neck, Brian that was now dead. He claimed that he'd even had his neck measured prior to this whole thing to make sure that it fit. By the way, another random controversial fact is the fact that this man is only 46. Some witnesses also came forward to say that they swear that they heard Brian talking about a bank robbery before he actually did it. And some people wonder maybe Brian didn't actually realise that this was going to be a real device around his neck. Maybe he thought that it was going to be sort of staged. Maybe the most controversial and shocking part of this whole case is that 7 people were in on it. All 7 of these did actually end up dying from various things. This was a while ago now, but some did give evidence against Marjorie and basically said she was this evil mastermind. She was convicted of armed bank robbery, conspiracy to commit armed bank robbery, and use of a destructive device in a crime, and she got life in prison. And also she was obviously done for the murder of James. She is 100% certain Brian was involved with this. He signed up. But like, do we trust her? What could his motive even have been? Some believe that Bill Rothstein was also the mastermind behind this scavenger hunt, but he passed away before he could even undergo a trial.